our YouTube. Back again on the old number 2 rat rod build. A lot of sitting and staring and thinking about it over the past week. We left you off. I got my my scale diesel engine in from China, and I started working on it last weekend, trying to take it off of the stand, and I had some issues. One of the the front mounts for the stand were screwed in from the inside. So in the process of getting these brittle pot metal mounts off of it, I ended up having to drill out some holes, and I spent literally an hour and a half trying to get one of the screws out. And as you can see, some of the bits have come off the engine. My belt's on the front. I took the flywheel out of the back. So for now, we're just going to roll with it like it is. I'm going to have to re-glue some of the things on the front. But yeah, like I said, I'm not going to do that until we get this thing on here and mounted. So what I'm looking at here, where the mounts were, we've got holes here and holes here. And I've drilled this one through all the way, both sides, because this is the side I had issues with. It's kind of boogered up. Not sure if you can see that there. Focus in. It got a little jacked, but oh, come on, camera. There we go. You can see it goes straight through. So I don't know yet exactly how I'm going to do that. I don't want to take the motor apart anymore. My rear mounts were easy enough. I just drilled them out slightly bigger. I can put a nut in from the inside or come up with a different way of mounting it. I've marked a few spots here on the chassis where things should line up. So right now I'm going to do a little more brainstorming. I think I'm going to go ahead and drill some holes in the back end of the frame here on the Z that will line up with my rear mounts. I'm going to go ahead and get that in there, and then we can start looking at how we're going to get the front to stay where we need it. I've just got a drill bit here put through the hole and setting on the chassis, so I've marked where it needs to be, and I can see where my rear is going to be, and trying to set an angle, a pinion angle, the engine angle, stuff like that, figure out how to make it centered. So I'm going to get started here drilling a frame hole on each side, and they are different too. That's going to be another issue. I can't do exactly the same spot on both sides because the mount holes were reversed. It had a pin and then a screw, and then it was opposite on the other side, the screw and the pin. So they're going to be staggered just a little bit, which is going to make getting it centered even that much more challenging. But I'm going to get started here, and we'll work our way out of that. Alright, so I drilled a hole on one side. I'm trying to find a spacer, something strong, and I've got these. These are, I believe, off of a high lift or something. They're a spacer for your shackle mounts for leaf springs. So I'm looking at doing something like this. I'm not sure if you can see that. On both sides, I'm going to have to trim these down a little bit, but I think that's going to give me, as long as this will fit in the rail, yeah. They're metal. They're going to give me a nice solid support. And I'm just going to run a long bolt through those, and in here it's going to be scale hardware from Locked Up RC, so you have another scale bolt on the outside. Run all the way through there and into my bell housing here, my flywheel area, and I'm just going to put a nut on the inside. I will have to modify the flywheel wherever it went. The flywheel attaches through to the front pulley. There's a axle or a rod that goes through, so all I'm gonna have to do is just trim that down so it clears the bolts that are the nuts I put on the inside, and yeah, now I can put all that back on and hold the front belt system on with that. So I've only drilled one side of the frame. I've got to deburr the inside of it, and I'm going to shorten those down. I'm going to do it little by little. Probably just going to use my bench sander and sand a little bit down off the ends until I get them even. That way I guarantee that it's centered. And once we get that in, then I'll make sure the motor is centered in the frame this way. Make sure it's centered front to back. And I will mark and drill the hole on this side, since it is staggered like I said. And then once we got the back end, the motor straight, then I can worry about the front mount. And I think that's going to involve some welding or brazing or something. We'll get there in a little bit. First steps first. Alright guys, I got one side on because the frame is tapered. It is pulling it a little, but once I get the other side in, I can straighten the motor back out pretty easily. It'll flex enough. It turns out I didn't need a nut on the inside. I drilled those holes, I can't remember what side, 3/8 or something. And that metal's kind of soft. It's like a pot die cast. You know how that stuff is, that it threaded right into it, and it is not, I mean, I can't even barely move it up and down, so it's not going anywhere. So yep, I just gotta kind of eyeball it, hold it straight. I'll pull the motor right there, and then I will mark my other hole on the other side. We'll drill it out in the drill press, and then we'll have our back mounts in, and we can move on to the front. Alright guys, I got that hole drilled. That drill press is probably one of the best investments that I've made in a long time. That thing is so handy for this type of work, building stuff from scratch. It's just a lifesaver. I don't know how I built my other rat rod just using a Makita drill with a drill bit on it. I was making a mess of stuff, wallowing out holes, drilling the wrong size, getting stuff crooked. That drill press just simplifies it. It applies the amount of force you need, cuts the steel a lot better than trying to hold a drill. What am I looking for? Screwdriver. No, screwdriver. There we go. Sorry guys, bouncing around. You don't really think about it. I haven't really thought about it in a while, but all this kind of stuff, this fab stuff, and I'm bouncing back and forth between tools. But on top of all that, trying to figure out what I'm going to do and how I'm going to build things and how I'm going to make things work. I'm also moving cameras around, getting lighting, adjusting things like that. So there's a lot going on here. Never really kind of thought about it until recently, now that I've got all these extra tools in the shop. Alright, this is going to be tricky to cram this in here. Got my angled... Nope. Come on, baby. Sorry guys, this probably isn't making for a very exciting video at the moment, but gotta do what I gotta do to get this in here. I could pause it and come back and be all done and stuff, but I know a lot of folks out there like to see the struggle. That's part of my channel, is I try to keep it as real as you can. I don't pretend things are easier than they are. When I screw up, you'll see it too. I think I'm going to loosen this cross member here. Give me a little bit more room between these rails. So I wanted this to fit pretty snug. Excuse me. It's been cold out here all week. Working nights. Out in the cold air. Make me cough. Alright, now get this threaded in. Oh, did I mess up? I think I messed up, guys. I think I messed up. Looks like my hole moved further back than I intended it to. So we got a problem. Alright, like I said, I'll show you when I screw up. I drilled my hole a little too far back. It is closer to the front, so yep, I'm just going to have to drill the hole, widen the hole to the side. I have any of those spacers. I'm out of my little conical spacers. Those helped when using the scale hardware. It gives you bigger surface area against the surface that you're screwing through. I may have to just install a standard washer. I'm going to go ahead and widen that hole out the direction I need. Nothing's ever perfect, guys. That's how it works. It's part of the rat rod thing, is you just using what you got and making the best of a bad situation. So I'll fix this up real quick and then we'll come back. Alright guys, so I just had to drill a whole nother hole. I screwed up my measurement. I thought I told you they were offset. The holes were opposite on opposite sides, but I've measured it backwards. This one is further to the back and this one's further to the front. So I drilled this side out further to the back. And that was going to put everything nice and crooked, but fixed now. I am a little tight, but I'm getting it in there. Let's see, we're already into the motor now, so I'm just going to keep forcing this in here. Where is it at? Okay, so we're in. Alright, there we go. Alright, so the motor is mounted now on the rear. Actually pretty solid. The oil pan sits on the ground when the frame is laid out. Let me flip it around here. Alright guys, so here we go. It's in. Frame is flat. Motor's got a little bit of lift in the front. It's not quite on the ground. Where's my drill bit? So I've been using this drill bit here. What is it? A 11/64 to put through the motor and mark my mounts, which my marks on the chassis are still accurate. So now I have to decide what I want to do. My original plan was to try to build a sheet metal mount that was reinforced from inside the frame, came up and had rods that went into the motor. But I'm thinking now my best option, easiest option, is going to be to get some steel rod, which I should have, and just run through the motor and weld it on both sides of the frame, which I'm kind of scared to do because some of these accessories on the motor are plastic and I don't want to melt them. But the part of the motor that the rod will go through is metal, it is steel or pot metal, cast iron, whatever it is that it's made of. So I'm not too worried about that, but I'm worried about overheating some of the accessories. This whole fuel rail is plastic, alternator's plastic, fuel filter's plastic, so that's going to be my easiest way, is to cut a piece of metal, put it to the engine, and just weld it to the frame. That way it keeps the motor at the right height, and while my rear mounts keep it centered, because this isn't moving side to side. It is set in the chassis now. It's not going to move around. So let me look at what I have, what metal I have, and see what we can come up with. Alright guys, so here's the setup. I drilled the holes out just a hair bigger because the rod I had was just a little bit bigger than that drill bit. I've cut and angled the piece to fit. I've taken my steering servo off so I don't damage it. And I've decided to go ahead and braze this because welding, I'm just going to destroy the motor. The brazing, I can angle the torch in now that I have access to the front, keep the heat away from the engine. Still going to be close. Still could cause some damage, but it's the only option I have, really. I know I could make this more scale. I'm just not that good with brazing or welding little bitty things. I haven't gotten that good yet, so you know, each build I get better and better. This is where I'm at this time, so this is what we're going to do with this one. Yeah, so I'm going to get the torch and stuff set up, and we'll braze that down on both sides. I think it's going to look better too. You have a more scale finish with the brass all around the metal. I think it's going to look cool. So I'm going to get ready and we'll heat this thing up. Alright guys, well, I started out a little too hot. I did kind of burn the side of the motor. Only lost the dipstick. Had a white dipstick come up the side here. It disintegrated pretty quick. I am planning on weathering the motor, so I'm not too worried about the blackness stuff that's on here. I will be adding more of that later. Let me zoom in a little bit. You can see how bad I did. I don't know. The last thing I brazed was my surprise gift for my girlfriend, and I was used to running wide open on the torch, so I started out a little bit too big of flame, and I started out on that side with all the little delicate plastic parts. So once I melted the dipstick off, I realized what was going on, so I cranked it down nice and low. But motor is in, permanent. It ain't going nowhere. Let everything cool down before I put my steering back on. I don't want to melt my expensive servo wire. But yeah, I think it's in the right spot. I got a good angle to it, and it sits flush with the chassis on the ground, oil pans on the ground. So we'll let this cool down here a minute, and we'll kind of mock everything back up, see what it looks like. Alright guys, got it all in. It's cooled down, got the steering hooked back up. Yeah, this side came out good. I didn't hurt anything on the motor over here. Nice solid mount. Motor ain't going anywhere. Firewall is going to be a little tricky. I've got a little bit of recess. I had to leave room up front because I have the big fan, and I still need room for a radiator. I can rearrange my steering linkage a little bit to give me some more space. Also to help hide the servo once I figure out the grill. I've got this grill that I got. He gave me a spare one from Nightcrawler's 3D with that other body, and it kind of fits with this body, but it will have to be modified. So I'm not going to do that yet. That's still a long way down the road. But I'm kind of excited now. I got the motor in. Next step is to put the RC motor in, so I can set up. I am planning on using this, the old Disruptor transmission from RC 4-wheel drive. Either that or I have an old R2. I'm not sure yet which way I'm going to go. I just have to see what fits. Trying to get all the drive line in and set up, and then we can start thinking about suspension. So I still don't know what I want to do. I'm still torn about making a servo actuated type lift suspension, or just raising it up a little bit and having a really low ride height and a set suspension with a cantilever type setup. So not sure yet. I'm kind of doing the opposite with this build that I did with the previous one. In the previous one I set up all the suspension first. That was just where the build led me to do. I was completely inspired with suspension. This build I'm completely inspired with the look. So we're gonna, I guess, design or engineer the functionality around the design, hopefully to get a more realistic appearance. But yep, that's where I'm going to end this one. I appreciate you guys watching, and please like, subscribe, and share. You can find me on Instagram, RC Everyday, and photos of all my builds and things are on flickr.com/strangely_different. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.